Perfect. Well, welcome everyone here. Today's kind of the new 2025 format here. We're starting to alternate our calls between ones that are just rocket pool community focused, such as today's, and then other ones where we invite a special guest, usually somebody involving DeFi integrations, as we begin to kind of expand the integrations of rETH utilization to help kind of boost the attractiveness and the utility of rETH. But today's call is just internal here. And Mav had put together a post that was posted in the protocol channel, and it had a link to a thread in trading that says, what do you want to ask Langers? And there were at least maybe 8 or 9 groups of questions that I summarized and Mav summarized and just posted those in trading not too long ago. And thought maybe we'd start off there, but I certainly want to invite anyone, if you have questions, to come up on stage.
Nothing's there has changed, really. It does seem to be that every now and again there'll be a kind of like a black hole will appear and suck people into it.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I was listening to a rocket fuel lately and kind of reading through the thread there, and I thought, well, maybe the thing people miss most is price go up and to the right, but surprisingly, what they missed most was just the maybe the interaction with the team members, and I wondered, Langers, if you'd allow the team to maybe have some assignments to go shoot the shit and trading a little bit more. It seems like they're all kind of heads down. I don't know if that's with the focus on Saturn or some deadlines coming up, but when can we have the team
Yeah,
come in and just shoot the shit with us?
yeah. DevNet one has definitely been taking up a lot of our time, and with that other stuff as well, but mainly DevNet one, I would say. Um, yeah, no, we all watched Wax episode actually, pretty much. So we're all very aware of that kind of um, what the community needs from us from that perspective. So yes, we are trying to be more active within the Discord. The last like day or so has been hard, particularly for me, but I've been trying to get in there and do something. But yeah, so that's we will be very mindful of that going forward, and we'll try and kind of put aside a little bit of time each day to have a chat and that sort of thing.
Yeah, we both have to twist Dave's arm, tell him he's got to spend at least an hour a day in trading.
Yeah, that was quite nice. That was quite nice actually. That the community really missed Dave. So yeah, I've definitely forwarded that along, and we'll get him in there.
Yeah, yeah. One of the other questions that came up here, and I'll start looking at trading here. I see there's some questions there. I don't know if they're serious yet. I'll have to take a look at them here in a second. But last time you were on the call, just our internal one here, you mentioned about some possibilities that are in kind of the maybe in a potential integration or potential use. You mentioned perhaps Fidelity and Sony. Anything you can kind of share on that, or any leads that you can share? I know it's always kind of hard in business development here as to what leads actually lead somewhere, but any updates on BD leads?
Yeah, sure. Specifically Fidelity and Sony. So um, Fidelity, to be honest, our main contact that was quite responsive is not as responsive. Um, but so we've kind of been giving him a bit of a benefit of the doubt. But what we're probably going to do now is throw it wider. We have some other contacts that we can kind of like go wider. I'm not quite sure whether there's been some movement or something like that with him, but we will kind of like throw that net wider so that we can kick off those discussions, particularly around
No,
the
Kelly,
liquid
don't
staking, particularly around the liquid staking side of things now.
Please, Nelly.
Oh, hang on a sec.
Invis, I think you got, or no, it's not Invis. I'm sorry. The fee switch guy. You got a
Yeah,
hot mic here.
yeah. Hey,
So used to
awesome.
blaming Invis.
Um, so with Also, particularly with the liquid staking side of things, because things are definitely moving on that front. So I'll try and I don't want to mix up the things. So maybe I'll stick with BD, but call me back to the legal stuff in a minute if you can, Ken. So in terms of Fidelity, we're throwing the net wider so we can get some of those contacts. With Sony, we are in a holding pattern with them. To be honest, from their side of things, they are trying to figure out where they're going, and so that has we are in a holding pattern with them. But I am following up, and we should hopefully have a bit more information within the next couple of weeks or so with them. Other things that have been going on. The main thing that has been probably the last couple of weeks has been Arbitrum. So Arbitrum have a whole bunch of ETH that they want to use within their ecosystem. And so we've been working with myself and Grant and Alpha Growth. I've been kind of like working on, well, actually, sorry, more than that. It's actually really good because it crossed pretty much the whole DAO. And so it was like me, Grant, the IMC, and I think a little bit of the GMC as well, on trying to figure out what deal we can put to Arbitrum to get them to basically stake their ETH with us and then use it within DeFi in the Arbitrum ecosystem. So I think we put a really good case together, and a big thank you to Alpha Growth for like pulling all of that together for us. Yeah, and there's some good conversations across the board with basically with Arbitrum. They wanted kind of like joint applications, so applications with other with lots of parties. So for example, our one, it was us and Balancer. I think there was a little bit of Arbitrum in there as well. Sorry, not Arbitrum. Aave. We were definitely talking to Aave, but I think in the end it was just us and Balancer. So, and that the idea behind that is that they will stake their ETH and use it within Balancer. Sorry, yeah, actually, they'll use it in Balancer, but it will use one of the Balancer pools that it goes to Aave under the hood, and so yeah, it ended up looking really good. So that's a really good opportunity. So that's kind of like Arbitrum. Then wallets. We have spoken to Trezor. We're kind of in the very early, getting to know you phase with Trezor, trying to figure out how we can kind of like work with them. But that's pretty good. Ledger, there's been a whole heap of changes their side in terms of their like people. So like half the people that we were speaking to originally have moved on. So we're kind of like reorganizing that and getting back into Ledger to try and see if we can do that stuff. Grant's been working through the other list of wallets that he's got, reaching out to them and essentially trying to drive native staking, so like a native staking UX within each of those wallets. So that's been going on. We're talking to Aave directly about some stuff, trying to get to work with them a little bit more. I think that they're the main ones. Maybe Grant can chip in and any other big ones that I've missed. They're the main ones. Oh, sorry. The other one that we're talking to is World Liberty Financial, and yeah, hopefully we can get something working with them as well.
Yeah, perfect. And I certainly know on like business development, it takes a X number of leads to lead to only kind of Y number of callbacks, and and then Z number of actual mints or purchases. So it's great. It's great to kind of hear the focus on business development and maybe you're expanding role, helping Grant and Mav in that area. That kind of leads to one of the other questions here. I'll circle back on one we didn't talk about, but it does seem kind of a good segue to talk about ETH Denver and the team's plans for ETH Denver. You want to share a little bit about that and what your goals are that you hope to accomplish this year?
Yeah, so pretty much with ETH Denver, there's pretty much one goal every. So each conference actually, we do actually have a goal for each conference, and with ETH Denver, it's all about connecting with the community. So so the biggest focus will be on kind of like a social event during ETH Denver, which Mav's putting together at the moment. So that's kind of like the main focus, and obviously kind of hanging out with the community at the event itself. We won't have a booth this year. Um, we're kind of like playing a bit smaller. I think mainly because like headspace wise, none of us really had the headspace with Saturn kind of like going on to get some of that stuff done. So so that's kind of like we're kind of playing it a bit smaller, but we'll try to have like an area that we can kind of like hang out in, or we'll definitely do some kind of like social things and let people know where we are and all of that sort of stuff. So I think I'm going to be on a panel at the moment. I think Mav's just organising that at a restaking conference. I think that's the only actual like appearance I've got over the time. But yeah, it'll be fun. Like, I think, as I said before, connecting with the community. Other conferences have like hanging out with researchers or you know and that sort of thing. But with ETH Denver, it's all about the community.
Yeah, I for one am really looking forward to this year's ETH Denver. We were chatting just a little bit before the start of the call, and I think I was still in a little bit of fatigue from DevCon, but over the last couple of weeks here, I got my wind, and I spent the weekend kind of mapping out not only the main event but the side events, right? ETH Denver, if you haven't gone before, it's a kind of a choose your own adventure, right? You got kind of the biddle days beforehand, the main festival, which you have to at least spend a day in the main event or a day and a half in the main event, and numerous side events. And like you said, it's just about connecting with stuff. And I think it's going to be important for the team to not only connect with the community members that attend, but I also think that in kind of relation to the previous conversation about business development, right? The other side of Rocket Pool is the product we produce, the rETH liquid staking token, and we really need to start developing those relationships. I know that Alpha Growth is going to be there at ETH Denver, and they're going to be doing some business development on our end, and it's kind of that opportunity to meet people in person and either work on strengthening relationships or start making introductions on new relationships, because this is the one conference where basically every team or any protocol that's anybody is kind of at, whether or not they have a booth or not, but they're definitely present. They send their team members and they're engaging. So I think it's going to be a really critical ETH Denver for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, connecting with the community is the primary thing, but under the hood, we're reaching out to all those kind of like partners. As you said, it's a good opportunity for people to chat and kind of I think bolster the relationship is definitely one way of saying it. Once you've met somebody, it's definitely a much stronger relationship. And also to kind of like talk through opportunities and that sort of thing. So those sorts of things are happening where we've got a list of people that we're hoping to connect with when we're there as well. It's a bit funny because you don't necessarily lock in times, because nobody really what they're doing until they hit the ground. But um, there are kind of like a list of people that we know are going to be there, and so we'll try and connect up with them when we hit the ground.
Yeah, and everything I'm hearing is, again, it's going to be a little bit of a an SHIT show there. I mean, the planners at Spork DAO, they do an amazing job. It's all community led, but again, the numbers this year are just kind of crushing them. And the side event list I see now is eclipsing even the side event at DevCon. So, that spreadsheet rolls on forever. So yeah, it's going to be quite an agenda. So I'm telling everyone that's coming to it, definitely sleep on the plane. Once you get there, there's just going to be no rest. It's going to be event after event after event.
It does look like there's something for everyone on that side event list. There's like, if you're into anything, like, there is some crypto thing you're interested in overlap.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. It's going to be interesting to see too. This is probably the first year in which I would say there's traditional finance guys coming. I think maybe last year I saw a couple people in suits, but it'd be interesting. I went to the the Bankless conference that they put on permissionless, and you do get a lot of the traditional finance people, suit and tie or press plants. But ETH Denver is not that. The way I describe it is Burning Man meets crypto, and it's going to be interesting to see how like World Liberty finance kind of integrates with the crowd there, and see how that goes. But it's going to be something to look forward to, I think.
Yeah, I think East Denver would definitely be a culture a culture shock.
Yeah, definitely. So the other thing I'm hoping to pick up is some new Rocket Pool crypto swag here. And one of the things that Dr. D wants to ask here is, any word when legal will clear the use of logos by the DAO for our merch store?
So I did check this morning, and there wasn't any news on that. So I think we're definitely getting to the point where it's getting a bit ridiculous. So we will. You know, okay. Oh, no, okay. There is. We're gonna do some checking because the lawyers may have done stuff but did not let us know. So we're gonna double check that. But either way, we will escalate it and get things moving because it is starting to get a bit ridiculous.
Perfect, perfect. Well, I'm hoping the team brings at least a suitcase of swag to pass out to the community as well. Then.
I believe we've got beanies. I'm trying to. I don't know how many, but I believe we've got beanies this year.
I was just telling everyone on the weather. I think it's going to be really warm in Denver this year. So you can never win, but okay, that'll be good.
No, it's colder than here, so
We'll definitely pack shorts and a t-shirt because I think it's going to be hot. Uh, let me ask you a little bit as we switch then from. Is there anything else still on Youth Denver you wanted to cover? I guess I don't know, Mab, if you have know any more details. I know there's a poll out about what dates people want to do the socialization and meetup.
Hey, yeah, we're still finalizing the details, but it's looking like either the Friday or the Saturday could work, so watch this space.
Okay, perfect. It'd be kind of fun. You give everybody a 24-hour notice and say, okay, show up. But that could be part of the fun. But I think Langers, you kind of called it right. You got to kind of have a plan going in, but you also have to be very fluid with East Denver, the traffic, the crowds, the craziness, the logistics. You just got to kind of roll with it sometimes. So this should be good. But let's transition for a second and go to kind of Saturn one. So I know on Monday or Sunday, sometime in the last couple of days, we had DevNet one. You want to talk a little bit about that and maybe explain it? I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? And just talk us about where we are with Saturn one.
yeah. So with Saturn in general, it's an awful lot of scope to kind of like deliver. So we didn't want it to have, we didn't want to have basically this long this long nothingness. And so we're doing kind of like these dev nets to first of all, because they're good milestones for us to kind of like work towards. Second of all, it means that the community can actually get involved in testing it and refining it and that sort of thing, and provide feedback on it. And it kind of like gives that you know, the continuous progress and that sort of thing through it. DevNet 1 is actually probably the biggest one, I would say. You know, all of the kind of like infrastructure and that sort of thing is kind of built with DevNet 1. The rest of them are slightly smaller. So we're kind of like working on DevNet 2 at the moment. So DevNet 1, the aim of DevNet 1 was to allow you to, is basically to do the deposit process. So it is deploying a megapool, depositing a validator through that megapool. It is staking, which is like that second transaction that we do. We've still got that second transaction. Staking, exiting the queue. So with Saturn 1, you can actually exit the queue. So it is, so if you're in the queue and you're waiting to be assigned, anytime before assignment, you can actually exit. So you can exit the queue, and when you exit the queue, it gives you a credit. So you can then either come back later and deposit again, or you can cash that credit out for rETH. So you can withdraw that credit as rETH. So that whole process is in there. Dissolving is in there. Dissolving is slightly different to how it was before, in the sense that dissolving only happens when if it's been assigned ETH and it hasn't executed that for the last I think it's like 2 weeks, or I think it's 2 weeks or something like that, 2 or 4 weeks, and then it's dissolved. There's some slight changes in the sense that a node operator can dissolve it anytime they want. So if they have issues with their node and they can't fix them, or for some reason, then they can actually dissolve it themselves. And actually after the period, I think anyone can dissolve it. Then we've got anyone can. That's a good point. Anyone can actually dissolve it, which means we don't have to have the ODAO doing that duty. It's actually a and there's that. We're discussing. We haven't quite got there yet, but we're discussing whether there's like an incentive for people to dissolve. That's kind of in discussion at the moment around the RPIP specs and that sort of thing. So yeah, dissolving. I have a big list in the protocol message. I think that's basically it. So yeah, so that whole kind of like, basically a lot of the megapool stuff is in there for depositing is in there.
So what should
Express? Sorry, yeah. Well, sorry. One sec. The express ticket allocation. That's right. So there's actually 2 queues. There's a standard queue and an express queue. You get these express tickets. So as a new node operator, you get 2 express tickets that you can use that put you in the express queue, which essentially moves faster and gets done first. And then if you've also got current mini pools, then you get essentially 2 tickets per mini pool, so that you can migrate your mini pools over as quickly as possible. The other thing that's in there as well is the megapool delegate upgrades. So as you know, as changes happen to the megapool, those upgrades kind of roll forward, and people can upgrade their delegates and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's all the stuff in DevNet 1. I can go through what's in DevNet 2 in a sec if you want. I'll leave it open to you for you go first.
Yeah, maybe let me just ask a question about DevNet 1 and apologize. I've been
Mhm.
kind of behind on it, and all I was able to do is just download the package from curl. And I guess well, I got as far as maybe trying to install it and saw it was version 1.8 or something, and then I was confused because my testnet node was already on version 2. But like, what should the node operators do with it if we've got a testnet node? Do we still run it along with our existing Holesky? Do we have to wipe our testnet node and install this one? Like how should we as node operators be downloading it and testing it? What do we need to do?
No, I mean that's a good point. The version is actually 1.16, 1.16 dev. That and the dev is important because it includes the devnet stuff. So what you can actually do, you can actually have them side by side if you want to. There's a few things you need to do to kind of like get that to work, and we can kind of provide some more information in the feedback thread if you want. But you can actually get them working side by side, particularly as if you've got a testnet node. So the devnet and the testnet are both Holesky based, right? So they work on the same chain. It's just they have a different deployment, right? So uh, in technical terms, it's a different storage contract. So so the devnet and the testnet are both on Holesky, but you'll need the two clients to you need two separate clients, but you only need one set of execution clients and consensus clients. So you can actually run both of them on the same machine. We can give you some instructions on how to do that if you want. So that's kind of that. I mean, the difference between I don't know about the interaction between version 2 and 1.16, but that should be okay as well. But yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah, I think that would be really good to have some kind of explain it to me like I'm 5 instructions, because I know a number of people in the community still keep a testnet node just to play around with these releases, but trying to figure out how that works with the separate versions would be good without them having to totally resync Holesky or wipe their existing real testnet node to install the devnet. I think that would be really good. And then what do you want? You want the node operators to actually the list of features that are in DevNet 1. It would be beneficial to have node operators go through the command lines and interact with the contracts and try to use a skip the queue ticket and try to use a get in the queue and exit out of the queue and just try to break the system, right? Try to use it and use these features.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We've already got some people kind of like starting that as at the moment. So yeah, the list of so there's a feedback thread where everyone's kind of like chatting. What I might do is I might dump the scope in there as well, so that you can kind of like see that. The idea, you go through the list of stuff that we've deployed, test it out, interact with it. I mean, you can use other things around that as well if you want to. That can be a good test. Although, just bear in mind that things like megapool RPL staking and that sort of thing isn't in yet, and things like reward distribution and capital distribution and all of that sort of thing, they're not done yet. So so just bear in mind that it's kind of like a partial the partial features. So mainly stick to the stuff that is in the scope. In terms of like how many people, like we don't need like hundreds of people, but a good few people working on it and kind of like testing it out. It will be really good. Feedback is also is good. The more refinements that we can do, more refining we can do, the better, because it then means that it'll be easier for people later on. But yeah, generally testing would be a really good thing. That's a big big part of all this thing is that if we're doing the testing earlier, it means that we'll have fewer issues, but we're better go live quicker as well. It's kind of like the idea.
Okay, so a lot of questions are coming in on this. Let me just take a couple of them here. So Dr. D's asking about the fast tickets. Can you explain that and how it works? Like, so we like how is this going to work in like the real thing? We have existing mini pools. We want to create a mega pool. Do we just get one, two nodes? Like how many tickets do we get? Can you explain the fast pass system?
Yeah, sure. So basically, there are two queues, and so there's a standard queue and an express queue. To get into the express queue, you need an express queue ticket. Okay, and the difference between the express queue and the standard queue is that the express queue gets processed first, but it also goes faster. There's like a queue rate, so it goes faster, and also and then the standard queue gets kind of emptied. So basically, the express queue gets emptied, then the standard queue gets emptied. In terms of the who gets tickets and all that sort of things, so every node operator gets like 2 express tickets. It's like the base provision. So even newly created node operators get 2 express tickets, which means that they can deposit 2 validators, and when they do, it'll ask them whether they want to put it in the standard queue or the express queue, it says, do you want to use your one of your express tickets? And you say yes, and then it will go into the express queue rather than the standard queue. So everyone gets the base provision. I mean, these numbers they're the initial values, but that is the probably what we're going with. But so you get 2 express tickets as a node operator. Then you get it's a bit complicated, but essentially you get an express ticket. You get 2 express tickets per mini pool. It's a bit more complicated because it actually takes bonded ETH into account. So for like 16 ETH ones, I think you probably get more actually. It takes your bonded ETH and divides it by 4. But for all intents and purposes, if you've got an 8 ETH mini pool, you're going to get 2 tickets, right? So the idea behind that is you can then all of your mini pools you can migrate using the express queue. So if you've got a mini pool at the moment, or on when we release Saturn 1, you will be able to go into the express queue and migrate at that point as well, instead of the standard queue. So the standard and express queues have kind of like two purposes really. The first one is a migration purpose. So we want to try and make sure that the current node operators get preferential treatment over like new node operators, so that they can migrate their mini pools over to the mega pool, to mega pools and validators. The other thing it does later on, once that migration is kind of like happened or is dying down, the express queue has this other purpose of meaning that smaller node operators kind of get slightly preferential treatment to come in as opposed to larger node operators.
Interesting. Yeah, it's I guess kind of a bit for me to wrap my head around, and I'm kind of thinking to myself, we could probably use an explainer on this one here. I'm seeing kind of the trading channel kind of light up a little bit as people are discussing this. I don't see any specific question in there, but yeah, I think we could all benefit from not only playing with it in the DevNet to experience it firsthand, but I think a little bit of an explainer to just kind of understand how that works, because one of the things I think many node operators are thinking with the eventual release of Saturn 1 and the introduction of megapools, it's going to be very beneficial for each node operator to transition from multiple mini pools into a single mega pool. and really understanding how that queue system works, I think, is going to be essential.
That would be an amazing bounty. I mean, I've written it down for us to kind of like consider, but as I was writing it down, it would probably be a good bounty.
Yeah, fortunately, I don't think I understand it clean enough in my head to explain it to somebody, but maybe we'll keep talking about it all the way through ETH Denver until it becomes really clear here. Maybe
Well,
it looks
all,
like,
all,
an understanding of it, maybe.
yeah. I mean, all this information are in the RPIPs. So we're just really working through the RPIPs and bringing those to life. But if you want to check that out, it's actually RPIP 59, deposit mechanics. I can post that in trading if you want, unless somebody else that already hasn't.
Yeah, no, okay, after 59 would be good. Yeah, there's so much to read and comprehend. Okay, let me ask another question then. So thank you for correcting me. Version 1.16-dev. So why are we still working on 1.16? Where is V2? Everybody's waiting for V2 here. What's the sit on that?
That's a great question, Ken. The reason is because so with the whole V10 release, we had to stay on 1.1 because we couldn't deliver it to both V2 and V1 at the same time. So there is going to be this whole there is going to be like an overlapping period, and so what we're aiming to do now is so the transition to V2 is started now. So we've been porting stuff over to V2 as we go. Some of the Saturn 1 stuff we've started doing as well, and we'll continue to do that into V2. The idea is that when we deliver DevNet 2, it'll actually be in V2, not V1. So there was just this like thing where we have to maintain. We just had to. It's because rolling out V2 was kind of like never a good time. So that we've kind of like drawn the line as saying that DevNet 2 is going to be the line that we draw. So Patches is working on migrating the V10 reward tree spec over to V2. That's like a big part of it. Then what we'll do is there may well be kind of like 2 releases for V2 in the sense that we will probably open it up to everyone to use first, but the ODAL may well do it a little bit slower, and that's because we just want to make sure that all of the stuff in V10 it still works with the V2 stuff. So there'll probably be two releases essentially, 2 rollouts, I should probably say, is the best way of saying it. So essentially this V2 timeline is going to be so V2 I think they're aiming to deliver at the end of March, and so the idea is that we'll move over the V1 stuff, the DevNet 1 stuff into V2, and then we can launch V2.
Okay, let me see if I get this straight.
There's too many V's. There's too many V's.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Okay, so let me see if I understood this. It took me a second. I could have it totally wrong, but okay. So ETH Denver is coming up here into February. At some point, the next hard fork happens, right? Pectra, and we have to have the current clients for Pectra. And are those going to be released for mainnet? Are those going to be released in another update for version 1, or will the Pectra compatible version of Rocket Pool mainnet be V2?
So I'm not 100% sure because it kind of depends on the timing. But ideally it will be in V2. but it depends on the timing of like Petra.
Yeah, it would, I guess the most ideal scenario, and I don't know if everything lines up, the stars will line up, but it would be great to be on V2 with clients that are Pectra compatible, and then
Mm.
also have V2 have the most recent version of the tree generation tool, which is V10, correct?
Yeah.
And I'm a little behind in my crypto Twitter, but have they announced the data Pectra? I saw that like Nethermind has a Pectra compatible client, so it must have some hard fork date or timestamp in there, right?
Yeah, I mean the clients are not they're not essential for like the V2 launch. I mean, we can do it, we can put it into V1 and then put it into V2. Like client updates are not necessarily the big thing for us to move to V2. I mean, it would be clean. It'll be nice and clean if we could say that. That you should be on for the hard fork. You should be on V2. That would mean that most people would upgrade probably a lot quicker than they would usually. But it's not necessary. We're not necessarily tying those two things together.
Yeah, no, I get that. I was just wishful thinking here. It's getting hard to figure out that okay. And then let me see if I understood you a little bit that the ideal is that we would actually launch version 2 smart node on mainnet first, and then for the devnet testing eventually version 2 will be tested there, but right now at least devnet 1's back on version 1.16 dev.
Yeah.
And thanks Lee, I see he said that they decided that the Pectra testing will happen on Holiski on February 26th,
Yeah.
and then Sepolia on March 5th, but no mainnet. So I guess if we're gonna try to launch Pectra with V2, we've got to accelerate that a little bit, huh?
No, I mean that's probably maybe end of March. Um, so it depends. It depends on how far after. Like it might actually be good timing. Because if Sepolia is beginning of March, then mainnet may well be end of March. So it could be good timing. It might not be. So we'll see. Um, that's not far off.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Definitely keep us apprised of that. It's certainly my hope. The commands are slightly different between V2 and V1. If you haven't noticed, and I get confused as to what command to run all the time. But let me ask about audits here. There's a question that was in the channel, asking for pre-questions for today, and one of those had mentioned that audits in the past had always been a little bit of a roadblock, or at least a hurdle that we would wait at the very end and then do an audit, and we'd have to wait for the audits. And you had hinted a little bit about doing rolling audits, like auditing part of the code, like after we do the DevNet 1 testing. Are there any updates with audits for Saturn One?
Yeah, I think Noshua raised that a little while ago. So yes, so no, so we wanted to get kind of at least DevNet 1 out of the way. We may want to get a bit of DevNet 2 out the way as well, mainly because in what we want to know is we want to have kind of a good idea that we're targeting the right sort of timing. We will start reaching out to auditors now to discuss what the options are and the timing and that sort of thing. But they may not start until like DevNet 3, or maybe DevNet 4, but like probably the earliest DevNet 3. But we will kind of like talk to them to see what they think is a good plan for that sort of rolling audit process.
Okay.
The
Well,
answer, basically, the answer is we'll be reaching out to them very soon.
excellent, excellent. I'm kind of keeping an eye on trading here, but I'd certainly like to invite anybody that has questions. This was at least all the pre-scripted questions we had from the thread or the channel, the thread in the trading channel here about this. But I invite anybody to either come up on stage here, unmute, or ask the question in trading. If anybody has any other questions over any of the topics we talked about for Langers. Seems like trading is still talking quite a bit about the queuing system, and I guess one other question on the queuing, and maybe you mentioned it, is one of the challenges right now. I mean, I guess multiple challenges. One challenge is we need much more rETH minters out there, right? We have to increase the minting of rETH. But the other one is I think people have been hesitant to join the queue right now because it's sort of a one-way journey, right? Like if you get on the queue, it's I forget how long it is, maybe 500 validators long or something to that point here. You're kind of taking a gamble about how long it will take to get to the front of the queue, right? Is that I think right now it's been taking maybe a month or two, but hey, past performance isn't indicative of future performance. It could take longer, it could take shorter, right? You don't know. But I guess what in the new mega pool, the Saturn 1 design, it's possible, or am I incorrect here? Is it possible for a node operator to voluntarily exit the queue if you get tired of waiting in line?
So I have been talking about this quite a bit internally with Kane. So the current queue is separate from the other queues. So so actually what will happen is the current queue will get processed first. So it'll actually go kind of like current queue, express queue, standard queue. And the idea there obviously is that we want people to want to process that queue, but it does mean we have to get through those that queue. One of the things I'm kind of like probably going to raise with the community is at what point should we consider kind of stopping deposits at some point, whether that is closer to kind of like Saturn 1 launch or whether it's a little bit earlier or something like that. Maybe we should consider kind of like pausing deposits on that queue. I'm not thrilled about that idea, but I think it might be good as we get closer to Saturn and to kind of like do that. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it, as you said, it does rely on rETH demand, which there are a whole bunch of stuff going on with rETH demand. So obviously the discount it doesn't help, but that is kind of gradually, that is kind of like being addressed in the short term with the exit arb stuff, and also like the BD stuff, all the other BD stuff and the rETH growth incubator things. So that's I lost track now, but that's on the kind of like the rETH demand side. We do need to fix this kind of like withdrawal stuff though, because we don't really want a depeg like we've kind of had recently to kind of happen again. The exit arb might give us enough, but it might not. And I know there's RPIPs kind of like being drawn up to kind of like help with providing some exit liquidity for rETH holders as a buffer to make sure that we don't get into that kind of like depeg situation again. And then there's the kind of discussion around whether we should exit node operators and that sort of stuff. So there's a whole heap of this kind of like short-term, medium-term, and long-term solutions for the kind of like rETH situation. The rETH situation means that there is less demand, but that should improve once that situation is has been resolved. Yeah, so I do think that we need to have a talk about whether we shut down the queue at some point, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, lots to unwind in there, and maybe there's could be some topics for future calls. But let me see if I understood what you're saying on the queue, and I would just want to put a pin in the kind of forced exiting to maintain the market price or the peg of rETH. But on the queue thing, so am I understanding you to say there's really three queues? There's the current queue, right? And then I guess
Yep.
post Saturn, when you launch Saturn, then there will be two new queues, an express queue, which we're all going to have to read that RPIP to understand how many tickets we get for the express queue, and then a non-express queue. I don't know what we're going to call it, the standard queue. And so we have to understand those new queues, but those are going to be separate from the existing queue, right? And the existing queue we can't exit from. And so the question is what to do with the validators in there. Do you close deposits on there? And you mentioned there were some downsides for that. I'd be curious to know what those downsides are. And do we try to get that existing queue as close to zero ahead of the launch to Saturn? So you really only have two queues post Saturn? Like explain this to me a little bit more. I mean, I guess this is the first time we're thinking about it. I know you've probably been thinking about it for a while, but what are the
Yeah.
downsides? Why don't we just stop deposits? We got a large capacity built up already.
Yeah, I mean, the only real downside is that we can't accept deposits. Like that's so which may well be fine. Like it does feel like I don't necessarily want us to be able to say that the pool is closed for node staking at the moment. Do you know what I mean? It would be better if we could work around that, but if that's what we have to do, then that's what we have to do. The other downside is that, so although I don't think this necessarily works out, but when you deposit into the queue, you actually progress the people at the front. So we would be taking that away as well. But then obviously you're taking away from the front, but then you're still growing the queue. So that doesn't work out. I don't think that really works out anyway. So yeah, that's what I'm. That's the discussion that I want people to have, is to figure out whether we do close the node staking at some point, or disable node staking at some point, or pause it. Actually, is probably the best way to say it. Pausing node staking so that we can clear some of that queue. The other complication though is that we do have the discount, so we kind of have to deal with the discount first and then start progressing the queue. So in that essence, that lends itself more to pausing the queue as well. So yeah, that's about the queue.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think I would be favor of pausing the queue, right? Or pausing deposits, right? Node operator deposits, because there's still already a huge built up capacity for those that are in the node, and we still have a very large deposit pool for rETH, so people could still mint directly on the protocol rETH. And surprisingly, I would have thought everybody wanting rETH right now would buy it at the market. I think I looked earlier today and it was like a 0.5%, half of a percent discount on market prices over the true rETH value. But surprisingly, a lot of people still mint, and I didn't know how that was. I thought maybe our front end was always pointing them to the lowest price, but the queue was advancing. I mean, there were still deposits going in the deposit queue, so I didn't know why people were still doing that. Maybe I was missing something.
Yeah, I mean, so I think actually our front end at the moment always deposits. That was mainly because we had this whole thing where people were getting sniped, and so we disabled disabled the secondary market option, so people always deposit. We have been looking at integrating cow swap, and that we've got a prototype, as I said, I mentioned before, we've got a prototype up at the moment. That's on my, now that DevNet 1's out the door, that's on my list to basically lock down whether we go forward with that prototype or whether we hold off. Obviously, what that means is people from our website's point of view will, while there's a discount, will always go to the secondary market, which I think is good. It's a trade-off. Everything's a trade-off, but it's good in the sense that it means there's then buy pressure for the rETH, so hopefully it should get the peg back quicker. But it does mean that we'll, until the peg has gotten a bit closer, they'll go to the secondary market rather than go to the protocol itself.
Yeah, I like that idea, because if people are, investing into rETH, it benefits everybody in the rETH. It benefits just the protocol in general if they bring the market price back to, what I'll call true price, right? Or the protocol price. So I definitely like that idea of it, buying at the discount to bring it back online, as much as I lose my reverse arb opportunity, but it's what's good for the protocol. But then even with the pool, the node operator deposit pool paused, they could still mint rETH. Let's say it goes back onto peg, and they'd still mint it. It would still process the queue, the hundreds of node operators that are in the queue already, and then even once it kind of consumes those, then we still have the 18,000 ETH limit to the deposit pool, right? I know that's unstaked ETH and probably not efficient, but it would build up a capacity, especially ahead of Saturn 1, because we're going to just have so much more node operator capacity with mega pools than mini pools.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, there are a few kind of in the air that we need to just nail down over the next couple of weeks to make sure that we're on the right track.
Excellent. Well, I don't see any questions in here. Lots of chatting and trading here, but anyone else have questions or lingers? Is there anything that we haven't covered on today's call that you feel is important that we should mention with the community?
BTCS.
Oh yeah, I think there's a couple of last minute questions in the thread, Ken. One about the communication that we've had with BTCS.
Okay, yeah, sorry I missed that one, but go for it. What is BTCS?
BTCS are actually a NASDAQ-based company, so they're a public company, and they are a rocket pool node operator. The idea is they're moving a lot of their stuff over to rocket pool, so we can expect them to kind of like deposit when there's probably less of a queue, but they'll be depositing more. In terms of so the other kind of like thing that they do is they actually run like a relay. So we're working with them to DevNet 1 is kind of like keeping us busy, but we are working on integrating their relay. Their relay is actually like a kind of like a hyper compliance relay, and because they're a public company, that they do like a hyper compliance kind of like relay. So that's what they've been. So we're looking at integrating that into the protocol, into the smart node. And in terms of like the communication, we've got some really good communication with them. We're actually catching up with them in Denver, so they will be in Denver. So we're going to catch up with them in Denver. And yeah, it was really so. In terms of like that was one of the ones where they reached out to us, but then they already knew a fair amount about Rocket Pool, and then we kind of like just helped them onboard essentially as a node operator. So we answered like a whole heap of questions that they had. They they got all of our stuff. They all went through like their legal and all of that sort of thing, and their compliance and finance departments and all of that sort of stuff. So they did all that kind of like their end, and we had kind of shot them back answers so they could get all of that information to their teams. And then and then we kind of like technically helped them a little bit, and then they kind of came on board. But to be honest, I asked them, how they felt about the whole process, and they absolutely loved it. Like I do think the smart node, that helps a lot from a technical perspective. The fact that it's super easy, but they found like documentation and that sort of stuff was really good. So yeah, I mean, they were very happy with the kind of like onboarding process, and now they're very comfortable staking ETH with us. So that's really awesome. I am going to talk to them a bit more about liquid staking. They've kind of ruled out liquid staking at the moment, but I do believe that the legal side of things are changing a lot, and that it may well open up some doors in terms of them accessing liquid staking and that sort of thing as well. It might be a bit slower, but things are definitely moving in terms of like the legal side of things. So yeah, that could help us, within the next few months or year or whatever, in terms of getting publicly listed companies or institutions on board with liquid staking.
Okay, and then just a quick time check. You still have some time to hang on. I see a couple more questions coming in.
Okay. Yes, I mean technically I've got the stand up, but I can stay on for a little bit longer if you want.
Yeah, well, let me try to get these in. One question I see here, there was something you'd mentioned about maintaining the protocol price of rETH, right? That's been most healthy when the price of rETH is very close to the actual kind of calculated price that it mints at, right? We can call that being on peg or whatever the word is we want to use for that. And you mentioned about changing the front end so that way if there's a discount, it directs buyers to buy from there. And same thing, I guess, if they go to swap back out of it, if there's a premium, it would swap back out and try to return that value to our ETH holders, right? To make it an attractive product. But you also mentioned about talking a little bit about, well, what happens if that's not enough, right? And to incentivize node operators to do a reverse ARB, right? A number of people have successfully done that here with, Troopers script, right? And, brought the peg down from about a 1% discount to a 0.5% discount is still there. But, has there been talk, or were you alluding to talk about, using in post Pectra some type of, execution layer initiated withdrawal system to, kind of have the protocol ensure liquidity in the exit pool or the rETH pool, or did I misinterpret?
So I think there's it's still a bit in flux, but I think the thoughts around it at the moment are so first of all, let's talk about the exit ARB stuff. So with the exit ARB thing, that is really powerful, and so we are. I've been kind of talking to Trooper a little bit about, or he's keen. Sorry, he's keen to make that an add-on to the smart node stack, and so we're going to support him as much as possible with that. I've spoken to Dave, and it looks like we should be able to do an audit on the contract side of things as well, to make that kind of as solid as possible, or to engender a lot of confidence in it, so that basically we want as many people to use it as possible, so that we have that market mechanism to bring the peg back. So that's kind of like one thing. The next thing is there's definitely, I think Val is putting together an RPIP on rETH withdrawal liquidity. So the idea behind that, and I think this is the latest anyway. I haven't checked in for a week or so, but I think the latest is that rETH deposits, what they'll actually do is they'll actually go, they'll actually fill up a withdrawal buffer first. So, so probably another queue is queues all the way down, but. So the rETH, this isn't actually a queue; it's just a pool of withdrawal liquidity. But essentially, rETH deposits will go into this withdrawal liquidity first until it hits a certain threshold, and then once it goes over that threshold, essentially it's filled up the withdrawal liquidity. It will then be everything above that will then be deposited into the deposit pool. So A35 you said there is a buffer, but the problem with that buffer, I think, is the fact that it gets arbed. So that's actually yield that's coming back. I think this adds anyway. I can talk through it a little bit more. I need to get a bit more across it, but that was kind of like the idea, to have another withdrawal buffer to try to bring the peg back. So that's kind of like the medium term, and then so that's actually like Saturn 1 probably, likely to be released with Saturn 1, and then the last one is then almost basically forced exits. That's something that we definitely need to talk about a lot more. I think Noshua kind of likes this as well, but there should be these other mechanisms, and then that should be the last mechanism. So yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. Is hopefully there's two good mechanisms. There's the exit arb and the just withdrawal liquidity to bring the peg back. And if both of those kind of like fail, then we've got a fail safe, which is kind of essentially exiting validators. Ideally, we don't use that third one as much. But again, all of this stuff we need to kind of like talk through. The rETH liquidity withdrawal stuff is being written up as an RPIP, so I'm sure that we should be able to get that out to the community soon. And Val's working on that, so we'll be able to get that out to the community so that people can kind of like see what the idea of that is. And I know there's a lot of discussion around the other one. I'm not sure whether it's actually been formalized or not, but definitely hasn't been formalized, I don't think. So there's some discussion, a lot of discussion about that one as well.
Yeah, no, perfect. Thank you for sharing that. I've heard, little bits here and there, and boy, I thought I was keeping abreast of this community, but there's a lot going on. So I really appreciate you kind of taking the time to explain that, and maybe we can explore that in some future community calls. Let me ask one last question here from Samus, and then maybe Mav, you could just tell us what events we have coming up, because I know there's a couple of them here. But the question from Samus here, I want to stick in here because he's been waiting patiently, is the team participating in the STAR campaign or contacting any of the large DAO or treasuries, or is the STAR campaign happening completely independent from the team?
So the STAR campaign, I think, is really specifically to engage the community around the outreach stuff. So we're not necessarily directly, so we will probably participate in it, but we won't. But the idea is it is kind of separate, so it is kind of independent. One thing that we will probably use the STAR campaign for is and we've kind of started doing this as well. Is the Star campaign is actually quite good for sweetening deals. So we may well use that to sweeten deals. So we will participate in the Star campaign to a certain degree, but it is independent because I think mainly because it is a community initiative to get community engagement around outreach and all that sort of stuff. So and we don't necessarily want to tread on those toes too much, but at the same time, we also want to progress things as well. So we'll see how that kind of unfolds in terms of how much take up and all of that sort of thing. We will definitely be using the Star. As I said, we will definitely be using the Star initiative, but we won't be necessarily driving it. There'll be some crossover in terms of Grant will obviously be monitoring, or monitoring is probably not the right word, but definitely be aware of what's going on in that space, so that he doesn't step on any toes. But yeah, we'll probably be more participant rather than driving.
Yeah, perfect. And then Mav, you want to give us kind of a look ahead to see what we've got coming up with future rocket pool related calls?
Yeah, there's 2 events in the event section here in Discord for community calls, not rocket pool community calls, but related community calls. So the first one we have is later today, tomorrow morning, depending on your time zone. It's about 16 hours or so from now, and that is one of the ETH Staker community calls, and that will be about the rescue node, and will feature, I believe it's Patches, Ken, and Popash. I'm not sure if there's anyone else from the community going to be on, but certainly the usual ETH Staker crew will be. And then next week we have an interesting one calling out the Aztec community call. So you might be aware of Aztec. They are a privacy-focused protocol, and this is apparently an opportunity that rocket pool node operators that already have hardware and expertise may be able to also participate in the Aztec network. So if that sounds like you, head over to their call. I believe it's a little bit different to most community calls in that the link in the Discord event will take you to a place where you can sign up, and that will allow you to access the call, but something that the node operators may be interested in.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Matt, for sharing that. And yeah, it sounds pretty interesting. I know a little bit of the Aztec that there might be an opportunity for node operators to become part of their decentralized sequencer set. So, I highly encourage people to listen into that. It could be the future of L2s.
Also, if you are on the DeFi side of things with rETH, there's been an update from Liquidity a few hours ago. I've shared it a couple times in trading, and we'll probably do a retweet or a repost on X at some point. But they have a potential issue affecting their stability pools on the V2 release. So if you have a position open, might be worth heading over to check that out. You can see more on their X account.
Good to know. All right. Any other things here as we start to wrap up the call, either from Langers or Mav?
No, I think we've covered lots of stuff. So awesome. Thank you, Ken.
Well, I for one really appreciate the time you have, and I think it's great that we've got kind of these focused, just community calls with lots of questions that are there. And I see Langers, you already sent the message out. Kane was in trading while you were talking here, and I think everybody really loved to chat with him. It's been a long time since we've just chatted with the team members, so keep that up.
Will do. Thank you.
All right, everyone, have a great day.
Cheers, everybody. Talk soon.